So Senator Chuck Schumer, the majority leader of the U.S. Senate, he is saying, let's get rid of the filibuster, not just for voting rights legislation, but for anything Democrats deem important.
This was then Senator Joe Biden about changing the filibuster rule.
This nuclear option is ultimately an example of the arrogance of power. Well, at its core, the filibuster is not about stopping a nominee or a bill. It's about compromise and moderation. That's why the founders put unlimited debate in. When you have to, and I have never conducted a filibuster, but if I did, the purpose would be you have to deal with me as one senator. It doesn't mean I get my way. It means you may have to compromise.
Okay. President Biden last week, when it came back regarding Build Back Better not getting through because of the filibuster potential, take a listen.
Are you prepared to support fundamental changes in the Senate rules to get this done?
Yes.
What does that mean?
That means whatever it takes. Change the Senate rules to accommodate major pieces of legislation without requiring 60 votes.
They have no principles.
Right.
Because he's screaming in 2005. Now, maybe he doesn't remember it, what he was saying in 2005 or what it was even about. But it was all about, you got to deal with me. You've got to deal. It's all about Joe Biden. Now that he's president, dealing with the Senate, which everyone doesn't agree with what he wants to do, change the rules.
The Senate is the premier legislative and deliberative body in the world. And that means that it takes its time, and the legislation that may, by popular consent, be popping up in the House of Representatives, the brakes are put on that in the Senate, and it deliberates and it debates. And that's what distinguishes the Senate from the House, and that's why you need to keep it the way it is and has historically been.
We know that the basis of this is going to be election law issues. Because we, as Jordan said, we have the 2022 election season has whether you like it or not, it has begun. So right now, what you have is legislation. They call it Build Back Better, call it whatever you want, to change the way elections are conducted and taking power from the states, which is what the Constitution delegates, to the federal government. Now, will you litigate that? Sure, but that takes time. So we know what the power grab is here. It's not like this is an unknown.
When you have a piece of legislation on voting rights that has no text yet, I think that they're balancing, yes, this may be a mess for us later on other legislation, but if we can change the rules of the game in our favor and override all the work Republicans have done at the state level to win in state legislature districts, to make that a priority so that when it's time to redistrict after a census, they're in control. They spent the resources to do that. They went to the voters to do that. They want to override that. And that, to them, is politically more important than what piece of legislation in the future Republicans might be able to pass.
It's all about power. It's not really about the ballot. And so they see an opportunity to shove this legislation down the throat of the American people. And apparently they are willing to take advantage of this opportunity. Why? Because they are focused on the short run. They don't care really about the long-term future of the country.
They're trying to say it's only important legislation. Who is defining that? Legislation that makes its way to the U.S. Senate should be pretty important at that point.
You would think.
It's massive spending. What I think is this: if they want to become the House, become the House.
Well, that's what Andy said.
The American people don't. I think they've lost a lot of respect for politicians in general. They've pierced the veil, if you will. They're normal people. Some maybe not so normal some of the time. And the truth is that I don't think people would really care, but for the fact that they are trying to change the rules of voting before the next election because they're about to get slaughtered.
At the end of the day, that's what this is all about. It's how does this legislation impact the election? That's what they're shooting for here. So it's Build Back Better with a lot of other things added to it when you start getting rid of the legislative filibuster. Now, can they do it? I'm going to say it again. They can do it. They have the votes. They can do it. There's nothing in the Constitution that mandates a legislative filibuster, so they can do it.
I think there's two power moves here. One, change the voting rules. Two, before the midterms and the next presidential election. But two is pass a massive spending bill that will transform the federal government and the federal government's power, which includes doubling the size of the IRS, getting into your bank account, the lowest learner rule being abolished. The list goes on.